Hey, tonight we're going to journey back to the 1800s and discover what life was like for one of history's most fascinating monarchs, Queen Victoria. You'll feel what it was like to grow up in a royal palace, experience the challenges of becoming queen at just 18 years old, and find the kind of love most people only dream about. If you're enjoying these stories, I'd really appreciate a like or subscribe. I'm curious where you're listening from, so drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. Now, find a cozy spot, take a slow, deep breath and let your body sink into comfort as we journey back in time together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in Kensington Palace on May 24th, 1819. The air feels slightly cool against your skin and the distant sounds of London's horse-drawn carriages echo through the open window. Sunlight streams in, catching dust motes dancing in the air. You're in the dining room of all places, and a woman is crying out in pain. This isn't just any birth. This is the arrival of a princess who will one day rule an empire spanning a quarter of the earth. The baby's first cry pierces the air, and you feel your own lungs expand with a deep breath of relief. The exhausted mother, Princess Victoria of Saxe-Coburg-Saalfeld, cradles her newborn daughter. The little one has soft pink skin and a surprisingly strong grip for such tiny fingers. The room smells of sweat and lavender water, a strange but not unpleasant combination. The dining room might seem a peculiar choice for a royal birth, but there's wisdom behind it. Hot water can be easily brought up from the kitchen below. Birth is a practical matter, even for royalty. Alexandrina Victoria, the new mother whispers, naming her daughter after the Russian Tsar Alexander and herself. Everyone will call her Victoria, though, a name that will one day become synonymous with an entire era. You feel the weight of knowing something these people don't. This tiny, red-faced baby will rule for 63 years. She'll oversee the greatest expansion of the British Empire, preside over the Industrial Revolution, and her name will come to define an age. But for now, she's just a baby, unaware of the destiny that awaits her. The new princess doesn't know it yet, but her path to the throne will be marked by sorrow. When you're just 8 months old, losing your father leaves a hole in your heart that never quite heals. Little Victoria's father, Prince Edward, Duke of Kent, passes away from pneumonia in January 1820, leaving her mother a widow for the second time. You feel a tightness in your chest as you watch the funeral procession, the weight of black clothing heavy on your shoulders even though you're just observing. Victoria's early childhood unfolds before you like the pages of a storybook. The palace feels vast to a small child, its long corridors perfect for echoing footsteps. The wooden floors are cold in the morning against bare feet, and the high ceilings make every sound reverberate. Victoria's mother becomes increasingly dependent on Sir John Conroy, her comptroller and advisor. You watch as Conroy's influence grows, his voice becoming louder in the household, his presence more imposing. Together, Victoria's mother and Conroy create what becomes known as the Kensington system, a strict set of rules meant to keep the young princess dependent and isolated. You feel the frustration building in your chest as Victoria is never allowed to be alone. She must sleep in her mother's bedroom, cannot walk downstairs without holding an adult's hand, and is kept away from other children her age. The weight of constant supervision presses down on your shoulders, making it hard to breathe freely, just as Victoria must have felt. Despite these restrictions, Victoria's spirit remains bright. You watch as she plays with her dolls, creating elaborate stories and sewing tiny costumes for them. Her laughter bubbles up, light and airy, when she romps with her beloved spaniel Dash. The dog's fur is silky beneath your fingertips when you imagine petting him. His warm body curled at the foot of Victoria's bed provides comfort on lonely nights. Victoria's education is comprehensive, especially for a girl in the 1800s. Her tutor, Reverend George Davis, is patient and kind. You sit alongside her as she learns to speak French, German, Italian, and Latin. Her small fingers grip the pen tightly as she practices her handwriting, the scratching sound of nib against paper oddly soothing. She has a natural talent for drawing, and you feel the satisfaction of creating something beautiful as she sketches landscapes and portraits. The years pass like pages turning in a book. Victoria grows into a serious, thoughtful young woman with a stubborn streak. Her neck and shoulders sometimes ache from sitting properly for hours during lessons. Her eyes grow tired from reading by candlelight. But her mind grows sharper, her understanding of the world deeper. You feel the gradual building of her character, the slow development of the strength she'll need in the years to come. Meanwhile, the succession to the British throne shifts and changes. Victoria was fifth in line when she was born, but as her uncles die without legitimate heirs, she moves closer and closer to the crown. There's a heaviness in the air, a sense of destiny approaching, as she becomes the heir presumptive. On the night before her 18th birthday in May 1837, Victoria writes in her diary, "You can almost feel the smooth pages beneath your fingers, smell the ink as it dries. I shall be good," she writes with determination. The simplicity of this promise belies the complexity of the task ahead. Just weeks later, on June 20th, 1837, Victoria is awakened early in the morning. You feel her heart pounding as she wraps a shawl around her nightgown and hurries downstairs. For once, she doesn't have to hold anyone's hand on the staircase. The cool morning air raises goosebumps on her arms as she enters the room where the Archbishop of Canterbury and Lord Conyngham await her. Their faces are solemn, their clothes dark against the pale morning light. "Your Majesty," they say as they bow. The words hang in the air like morning mist. Her uncle, King William IV, has died during the night. Victoria is now queen. The weight of the moment settles on your shoulders. Imagine being 18 years old and suddenly responsible for an empire. Victoria's small frame seems too delicate for such a burden, yet there's a straightening of her spine, a lifting of her chin that tells you she's ready to face this challenge. One of her first acts as queen is simple but profound. She asks for an hour alone, something she's never been allowed before. The silence wraps around her like a comfortable blanket. For the first time in her life, she makes a decision without anyone watching over her shoulder. You feel the liberation in your own lungs as you take a deep breath alongside her. Victoria moves to Buckingham Palace, leaving behind the restrictions of Kensington. The new palace feels spacious and fresh, the air somehow easier to breathe. You watch as she distances herself from her mother, installing the Duchess in a far-off apartment. Victoria's face shows both determination and the lingering pain of their complicated relationship. The young Queen quickly forms a close bond with her first Prime Minister, Lord Melbourne. His voice is calm and reassuring as he guides her through the complexities of her new role. He becomes a father figure, filling a void that's been empty since Prince Edward's death. The gentle pressure of his hand on her shoulder steadies her when she feels overwhelmed. Victoria's coronation day arrives, June 28th, 1838. The crown feels heavier than expected as it's placed on her head. The jewels catch the light, sending rainbow reflections dancing across the ancient walls of Westminster Abbey. The robes are heavy on her shoulders, the scent of incense filling her nostrils. Despite some mishaps during the ceremony, a bishop fumbling his lines, an elderly peer taking a tumble, the day is a triumph. The cheers of the crowd outside wash over you like waves on a shore, their energy both exhilarating and exhausting. As a young, unmarried queen, Victoria becomes the most eligible woman in Europe. Various suitors are suggested, but one name keeps arising. Her cousin, Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg, and Gotha. You feel the flutter of anticipation in your stomach when their meeting is arranged. Albert arrives at Windsor Castle in October 1839. The moment Victoria sees him, something shifts in the atmosphere. He stands tall and handsome in his military uniform, his blue eyes meeting hers with intelligence and warmth. His voice, when he speaks, has the gentle lilt of his German homeland. There's a resonance to it that seems to vibrate in your own chest. 5 days later, Victoria takes an unprecedented step. As Queen, she must be the one to propose marriage. You feel her nervous energy as she summons Albert to a private meeting. Her hands are slightly damp, her breath coming quicker than usual. When she asks him to marry her, his face lights up with joy. The happiness between them is almost palpable, like sunshine warming your skin on a spring day. Their wedding day, February 10th, 1840, dawns bright and clear. Victoria breaks with tradition, wearing white instead of royal robes. The satin of her dress rustles softly as she moves, the Honiton lace of her veil delicate against her skin. Orange blossoms adorn her hair, their sweet scent following her down the aisle. Albert waits for her, his posture perfect, but his eyes revealing his emotion. You feel the collective breath of the audience being held as they watch this union of true affection rather than mere political alliance. That night, Victoria writes in her diary of her overwhelming happiness. The words flow from her pen like water, describing a joy she never thought possible. You feel yourself smiling as you read over her shoulder, her happiness becoming your own for a moment. The newlyweds retreat to Windsor Castle for a brief honeymoon. The castle's stone walls keep out the February chill and fires burn brightly in every grate. The soft crackle of burning wood and the occasional distant footstep of a servant are the only sounds that break the contented silence between them. Albert's hand in hers is warm and strong, his thumb occasionally stroking her palm in a way that sends pleasant shivers up her arm. In these early days of marriage, Victoria and Albert establish patterns that will serve them well through the years. Every morning they sit at desks placed side by side, working through state papers together. The scratch of their pens and the rustle of paper creates a soothing rhythm. The scent of ink and sealing wax mingles with the fresh air coming through the partially open window. Albert proves himself not just a devoted husband, but a valuable advisor. His logical mind and thoughtful approach complement Victoria's more emotional nature. You observe their discussions, feeling the ebb and flow of their conversation like waves lapping at a shore. They don't always agree. Victoria's temper can flare hot and fast, but they always find their way back to each other. Victoria's first pregnancy comes as a shock to her. The changes in her body make her uncomfortable and irritable. Morning sickness leaves a sour taste in her mouth, and her expanding waistline makes her favourite dresses unwearable. You feel her frustration as she realises that motherhood will repeatedly take her away from her royal duties. On November 21st, 1840, Princess Victoria, called Vicky by the family, is born. The pain of childbirth is searing, all-consuming, but when it's over, a different feeling takes its place. As Victoria holds her daughter, there's a curious mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The baby's weight in her arms feels strange but right, the tiny fingers curling around her own with surprising strength. Victoria and Albert's family grows rapidly over the next 17 years. Each pregnancy follows a similar pattern. Victoria's reluctance and discomfort, followed by the joy of a new child. Albert Edward, known as Bertie, Alice, Alfred, Helena, Louise, Arthur, Leopold, and finally Beatrice join the royal nursery. The palace that once seemed so quiet now echoes with children's laughter and occasional tears. Albert takes a more active role in parenting than most fathers of the time. You watch him get down on his hands and knees to play with his children, hear his deep laugh join their higher-pitched giggles. Victoria sometimes watches from the doorway, her face softening at the sight. The love in the room is almost tangible, like the warmth from a fire on a cold day. the royal couple creates a new image of the monarchy, one centered around family values and domestic harmony. Their Christmas celebrations become particularly special. Albert introduces the German tradition of the Christmas tree to Britain, decorating it with candles and small gifts. The scent of pine fills the room, mingling with the spicy aroma of mulled wine and freshly baked gingerbread. The children's faces glow in the candlelight, their excitement making the air seem to sparkle. Yet even in this domestic bliss, danger lurks. On May 29th, 1842, as Victoria rides in an open carriage along the Mall with Albert, a man named John Francis aims a pistol at her. You feel your heart stop for a moment, then race forward as the gun fails to fire. The assailant escapes, but Victoria, showing remarkable courage, rides the same route the next day to draw him out. This time when Francis fires, police are ready to capture him. This is not the first or last attempt on Victoria's life. Throughout her reign, 8 different men try to assassinate her. Each time she faces the danger with remarkable composure. You feel a shiver run down your spine, imagining the courage it takes to continue appearing in public after such threats. Beyond the palace walls, Britain is changing rapidly. The Industrial Revolution transforms the landscape from rural to urban. Factories spring up, their tall chimneys belching smoke into once clear skies. The air in cities becomes thick and hard to breathe, leaving a gritty taste at the back of your throat. The constant noise of machinery creates a background hum that never quite fades. For many people, these changes bring new hardships. Workers labour from dawn until dusk in dangerous conditions. Children as young as 5 or 6 work in mines and mills, their small bodies perfect for squeezing into tight spaces. The contrast between their lives and the comfort of the royal family is stark. Victoria herself holds conservative views about society. She believes people should remain in the class they were born to, and even opposes women's suffrage. Yet she shows compassion in other ways. During the Irish potato famine, which begins in 1845, she donates $2,000 from her personal funds to relief efforts, a significant sum that would be worth millions today. Albert, meanwhile, channels his energy and intelligence into public works. His greatest achievement is the Great Exhibition of 1851. Housed in the Crystal Palace, an enormous structure of iron and glass, the exhibition showcases industrial innovations from around the world. The building itself seems to capture light and hold it, creating an atmosphere of almost magical brightness. The sound of thousands of visitors echoes off the glass, creating a constant, gentle murmur beneath the higher exclamations of delight and surprise. Victoria visits the exhibition almost daily for 3 months, taking genuine pleasure in the displays. You walk alongside her, feeling her pride in her husband's accomplishment and in Britain's industrial might. The various exhibits engage all your senses: the gleam of new machines, the smell of exotic woods, the taste of foreign foods, the sound of demonstrations, the texture of fabrics from distant lands. As the day fades into evening, the lights of London begin to twinkle below the palace windows. Victoria stands with Albert, their hands just touching, looking out at the city they rule together. The weight of the crown has become familiar now, the responsibilities better understood. You feel yourself yawning, your eyelids growing heavy as the first part of Victoria's story comes to a temporary pause. The cool night air drifts through the window, carrying the distant sounds of the city slowly quieting for the night. Your breathing deepens, matching the rhythm of the royal couple as they prepare for sleep. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new joys, and the continuing unfolding of a remarkable reign. But for now, rest comes to Buckingham Palace, and to you as well, peaceful and deep. The morning sun streams through the tall windows of Buckingham Palace, casting long rectangles of golden light across the plush carpet. The palace is already alive with activity, servants moving quietly through corridors, official papers being delivered, and the distant sound of children's voices echoing from the nursery wing. You can feel the gentle weight of the day beginning, the soft pressure of time moving forward. Victoria sits at her desk, quill in hand, her back straight despite her small stature. Even seated, there's a regality to her that makes her seem taller than her 5'1" frame. The scratching of her pen against paper creates a soothing rhythm as she writes in her diary. A practice she maintains religiously. The ink leaves a slight metallic scent in the air, mingling with the aroma of freshly brewed tea in the delicate porcelain cup at her elbow. Nearby, at his own desk, Albert works on state papers. Their desks positioned side by side symbolise their partnership, unique among royal marriages of the time. You can sense the comfortable silence between them, occasionally broken by a quiet question or observation. The rustle of paper and the soft clink of a teacup being returned to its saucer are the only sounds in the room. Though Victoria is queen, their relationship has evolved into one where Albert takes on many responsibilities. Victoria, despite her strong personality and fierce intelligence, increasingly defers to her husband's judgment. You feel the gradual shift in the balance of power between them, not a surrender on Victoria's part, but a willing sharing of her burdens with the man she trusts completely. "He helps me so much and takes so much trouble," Victoria writes in her diary. "No one but he can ever be told what I feel." The depth of their connection is almost palpable in the room, like the warmth from a fire on a cold day. Family life for Victoria and Albert grows increasingly complex as their nursery fills with children. By 1853, they have 9. Victoria, Vicky, Albert Edward, Bertie, Alice, Alfred, Helena, Louise, Arthur, Leopold, and baby Beatrice. The royal nursery rings with childish laughter, occasional squabbles, and the constant bustle of nannies and governesses. Victoria's feelings about motherhood remain complicated. You sense her conflicted emotions, the love she has for her children mixed with frustration at the physical demands of pregnancy and childbirth. "I think much more of our being like a cow or a dog at such moments," she once wrote, the words revealing her discomfort with what she called the shadow side of marriage. Yet despite these sentiments, family forms the centre of Victoria and Albert's life together. Albert especially delights in his children. You watch as he gets down on all fours to play with them, his usual formality melting away. His deep laugh joins their higher-pitched giggles, creating a harmony of joy that fills the nursery. The carpet is soft beneath his hands and knees, the physical contact with his children a source of simple pleasure. Albert takes a particular interest in his children's education. The royal offspring follow a rigorous schedule of lessons: languages, mathematics, history, music, and art. You feel the weight of expectations on these young shoulders, especially on Bertie, the Prince of Wales and future king. The pressure creates a tightness in your chest, mirroring what he must have felt under his father's exacting standards. Victoria can be a stern mother. Her voice, though not loud, carries an authority that makes her children stand straighter when she enters a room. You feel yourself automatically improving your posture too, pulling your shoulders back and lifting your chin. Yet there are tender moments as well. Victoria reading a story aloud, her voice softening as she creates different characters, or playing simple games with her youngest children before they're sent to bed. The royal couple creates new traditions that will shape family life in Britain for generations. Christmas becomes an especially important time. Albert introduces the German custom of decorating an evergreen tree, placing it in Windsor Castle's drawing room. The scent of pine fills the air, sharp and fresh, mingling with the warm spice of cinnamon and cloves from mulled wine being prepared in the kitchen. Candles flicker on the tree's branches, casting moving shadows on the walls. Small gifts hang from the boughs, wrapped in coloured paper that crinkles pleasantly when touched. The children's faces glow with excitement, their usual decorum forgotten as they circle the tree. You feel their wonder as if it were your own, the magic of the moment warming you from within. Beyond the palace walls, Britain continues its transformation. The railways, once a novelty, now crisscross the country like iron veins. The rhythmic chug of steam engines and the piercing sound of their whistles become part of the national soundtrack. Travel that once took days now takes hours. The world feels smaller, more accessible. Albert embraces these changes, seeing in them the path to Britain's future prosperity. Victoria, more cautious by nature, follows his lead. Together, they become symbols of a modern monarchy, one that values progress while maintaining traditions. The British Empire expands dramatically during these years, stretching across continents. Maps in palace studies show more and more areas coloured in British red, parts of Africa, India, Canada, Australia, and numerous smaller territories around the globe. Victoria becomes ruler of an ever-growing number of people of different races, religions, and cultures. You feel the enormous responsibility this represents, the weight of so many lives affected by decisions made in London. Victoria's role as a constitutional monarch means she must work closely with her government ministers. The relationship isn't always smooth. The Queen has strong opinions and doesn't hesitate to express them. You watch as she paces in her study after receiving dispatches she disagrees with, her skirts swishing against the carpet, her breathing quick with frustration. Albert often serves as mediator, his calm voice and logical mind helping to find compromise. His German accent, still noticeable after years in England, somehow adds authority to his words. The slight roll of his R's and precision of his consonants makes everything he says sound more considered, more definitive. In 1856, Victoria and Albert face a distressing situation. Their oldest daughter Vicky, now 16, has fallen in love with Prince Frederick Wilhelm of Prussia. The match is politically advantageous, strengthening ties with Prussia, but means sending their beloved daughter to a foreign court. You feel the conflict in Victoria's heart, the Queen approving the alliance while the mother dreads the separation. The engagement is announced and preparations begin for a royal wedding. Vicky's trousseau is prepared, fine linens and silks rustling as they're folded into trunks, jewels nestled in velvet cases, the sound of seamstresses' scissors snipping through fabric, and the quiet murmur of their conversation fills the workrooms. The scent of lavender sachets placed among the clothes to keep them fresh perfumes the air. On January 25, 1858, Princess Victoria marries Prince Frederick Wilhelm at the Chapel Royal in St James's Palace. The bride is radiant in white silk and Honiton lace, similar to her mother's wedding dress 18 years earlier. Tears glisten in Victoria's eyes as she watches her daughter take her vows. You feel the bittersweet ache in your own chest, pride and happiness tinged with the knowledge that tomorrow Vicky will leave for Prussia. The separation proves as difficult as Victoria feared. Letters become their only connection. Pages and pages written in Victoria's distinctive hand crossing the sea to reach her daughter. The scratching of her pen seems more urgent now, the words flowing faster as she pours her thoughts and feelings onto paper. You sense how much remains unsaid, how inadequate words feel compared to an embrace. Meanwhile, Albert throws himself into his work with even greater dedication. His health, never robust, begins to show signs of strain. There's a new pallor to his skin, a slight tremor in his hands at the end of a long day. You notice him pressing his palm against his stomach. When he thinks no one is looking, a brief grimace crossing his handsome features. In 1861, tragedy strikes the royal family. In March, Victoria's mother, the Duchess of Kent, dies. Despite their complicated relationship, Victoria is devastated. The grief settles on her shoulders like a physical weight, making her movements slower, her voice quieter. You feel the heaviness in your own limbs, the effort it takes just to breathe through sorrow. Albert supports Victoria through this loss, putting aside his own increasing health problems. The summer heat seems to drain him further. By autumn, his condition is noticeably worse. His clothes hang more loosely on his frame, and dark circles appear beneath his eyes. The effort of climbing stairs leaves him breathing heavily, a hand pressed to his chest. Despite his declining health, Albert continues to fulfil his duties. In November, he travels in cold, wet weather to Cambridge to deal with a scandal involving their son, Bertie. The Prince of Wales, now 20, has been involved with an actress, a situation that horrifies his parents. You feel Albert's disappointment and worry like a knot in your stomach, tightening with each cough that racks his frame. Upon his return to Windsor Castle, Albert takes to his bed. Doctors are summoned, their leather bags containing instruments and medicines creating a dull thud as they're set down on bedside tables. The smell of illness pervades the room, medicinal, sharp, with an underlying note of sweat and fear. Victoria rarely leaves his side. You watch as she holds his hand, her thumb tracing circles on his palm as if trying to transfer her own vitality into him. His skin feels cool and dry beneath her touch, the bones more prominent than they were just weeks ago. The curtains are drawn against the December light, casting the room in a perpetual twilight that feels appropriate to the sombre mood. On December 14th, 1861, Prince Albert dies at the age of 42. The diagnosis is typhoid fever, though modern historians suggest it might have been Crohn's disease or abdominal cancer. Whatever the cause, the result is the same. Victoria's beloved husband, her strength and support for 21 years, is gone. The silence that follows is absolute, deafening in its completeness. For a moment, it seems as if the entire castle holds its breath. Then comes Victoria's cry, not loud, but filled with such raw anguish that it pierces you to the core. You feel tears welling in your own eyes, your throat tightening in sympathy. "My life as a happy one is ended," Victoria writes later. "The world is gone for me." The depth of her grief is fathomless, like falling into a dark well with no bottom. The ink on the page is blotched in places where her tears have fallen, making the words waver like reflections in disturbed water. The funeral arrangements proceed with the mechanical precision of royal protocol. Black-edged announcements are sent, mourning clothes prepared, the ceremonial aspects organised. The smell of black crepe and dye fills the palace as servants and courtiers don mourning attire. Outside, the December sky is appropriately grey, a light drizzle falling as if nature itself weeps for the prince consort. Albert is laid to rest in the royal mausoleum at Frogmore, which Victoria will spend years perfecting as a monument to their love. But this is just the beginning of her mourning. In the days that follow, you watch as Victoria withdraws into herself, shrinking from light and company. Her movements become slow, as if she's walking underwater. The black of her mourning clothes seems to absorb whatever light is left in her world. The Queen's grief transforms into something more than personal sorrow. It becomes an institution, a defining characteristic of her reign. Albert's rooms are preserved exactly as he left them, down to the basin of water and fresh towels brought every morning. The routine continues, as if he might return at any moment, the servants moving quietly through their tasks with downcast eyes. Victoria emerges from the initial shock into a state of perpetual mourning. She will wear black for the remaining 40 years of her life, the heavy fabrics weighing on her small frame like the grief weighs on her heart. You feel the physical burden of it, the tight collars, the layers of bombazine and crepe, the jet jewellery that clinks softly with every movement. The Queen retreats from public life, earning herself the nickname Widow of Windsor. She avoids London, preferring the seclusion of Windsor Castle, Osborne House on the Isle of Wight, or Balmoral in Scotland. Each place holds memories of Albert that are both precious and painful. You sense her conflict, wanting to be where she feels his presence most strongly, yet each familiar corner bringing fresh waves of grief. Victoria's children struggle with their mother's all-consuming sorrow. They too have lost a father, but find their own grief overshadowed by the Queen's. You feel their confusion and hurt as Victoria withdraws from them emotionally, seeming to preserve all her love for Albert's memory. The warmth that once filled family gatherings gives way to a chill that has nothing to do with the temperature. For the country, the Queen's seclusion creates problems. Public appearances had been an important part of monarchy, connecting the ruler to the people. As months of mourning stretch into years, discontent grows. Newspapers question whether a perpetually absent Queen serves any purpose. Republican sentiment, never strong in Britain, begins to gain ground. Yet even in her grief, Victoria continues to fulfill her constitutional duties. State papers are still reviewed, ministers still received, decisions still made. The work provides some distraction, though it's now tinged with bitterness that she must do it alone. The scratching of her pen on paper continues, but slower now, less certain without Albert's guidance. Victoria's household changes to accommodate her new status. Two figures in particular gain prominence: her Scottish servant John Brown and her Indian attendant Abdul Karim. Brown's blunt manner and unswerving loyalty provide a kind of comfort. His Scottish accent, with its rolling R's and distinctive cadence, becomes familiar in the royal residences. You notice how Victoria seems to stand straighter in his presence, as if his strength bolsters her own. Nights are the hardest time. Darkness brings quiet, and quiet brings thoughts, memories of Albert that flood back with painful clarity. The sound of his voice, the touch of his hand, the particular way he would tilt his head when considering a problem, all haunt Victoria as she lies awake. You feel the ache of absence, the empty space beside her that once held his warmth. Sleep, when it comes, brings dreams of Albert that are both comfort and torment. Victoria often wakes with tears on her cheeks, reaching across the bed before remembering. The cycle of grief continues day after day, the pain dulling slightly with time but never truly fading. Outside the palace walls, Britain continues to change. The Industrial Revolution reaches its peak, transforming the landscape and people's lives. Factories dominate cities, their tall chimneys releasing plumes of smoke that darken the sky. The constant clanging of machinery creates a backdrop of noise that seems to represent progress and pollution in equal measure. For the wealthy, this is a time of unprecedented prosperity. Fine homes are built, filled with manufactured goods now available to the middle classes. Gaslighting illuminates streets and homes, making the nights less dark. The soft hissing sound and gentle glow of gas lamps create a more hospitable nighttime environment in cities once plunged into fearful darkness after sunset. But for many, industrial progress brings hardship. Workers endure long hours in dangerous conditions, their bodies aching from repetitive tasks. Children as young as 5 or 6 labour in mines and mills, their growth stunted by poor nutrition and lack of sunlight. The contrast between their lives and the comfort of the palace is stark and troubling. Rivers near industrial centres turn unnatural colours from chemical waste, blues and purples and sickly greens that smell acrid and wrong. The Thames itself, flowing past the palace windows, carries the stench of a city outgrowing its infrastructure. The taste of coal dust lingers in the air, coating throats and lungs with a fine, gritty layer. Victoria, though physically removed from these realities, is not entirely ignorant of them. Reports reach her, statistics are presented, reforms suggested. Her own views remain conservative. She believes in the natural order of society, with each person in their appointed place. Yet, she also believes in the responsibility of the privileged toward the less fortunate. It's a complex position that reflects the contradictions of her era. As the day fades into evening, shadows lengthen across the palace floors. Lamps are lit, their gentle glow creating pools of warm light in the gathering darkness. The routine of the royal household continues. Dinner served, evening prayers said, preparations made for another night. Victoria sits at her desk one final time before retiring, adding a few more lines to her diary. Her hand moves more slowly now, fatigue evident in the slight tremor of the letters. The weight of grief, of duty, of simply continuing without Albert presses down on her shoulders. You feel your own eyelids growing heavy as you watch her, your breathing slowing to match her steady rhythm. Outside, stars appear in the darkening sky, pinpricks of light in the vastness. The night air cools, a gentle breeze stirring the curtains at half-open windows. Sounds fade, distant voices grow quieter, footsteps recede, doors close with soft clicks. The palace settles into night, creaking gently as old buildings do. Victoria finally sets down her pen and prepares for bed. Her lady-in-waiting helps with the many buttons and hooks of her morning dress, the black fabric rustling as it's carefully put away. The Queen's hair is brushed with long, soothing strokes, the silver strands among the dark catching the lamplight. In her nightgown, Victoria seems smaller, more vulnerable. She kneels beside her bed for prayers, her voice a whisper as she speaks to God and, in her heart, to Albert. The floorboards are cool beneath her knees, the counterpane soft under her folded hands. You feel your own muscles relaxing as she completes this nightly ritual. Finally, Victoria climbs into bed. The mattress gives slightly beneath her weight, the sheets cool against her skin. She extinguishes the lamp and darkness enfolds the room like a comforting blanket. Only moonlight filtering through the curtains provides any illumination, casting soft, silvery shadows. As Victoria drifts towards sleep, her breathing grows deeper and more regular. The tension gradually leaves her body, starting at her toes and working upward. You feel your own limbs growing heavier, more distant, as if they're sinking into the most comfortable bed imaginable. The Queen's life will continue for many more years. There will be challenges and triumphs ahead, moments of national pride and personal joy that will gradually coax her back into the world. But for now, rest comes, to Victoria, to the palace, and to you. Let yourself drift, floating on the current of history, knowing that tomorrow we'll continue our journey through this remarkable life. Morning comes to Windsor Castle, pale light filtering through heavy curtains. But for Victoria, waking brings no relief. Each day begins with the same crushing realization: Albert is gone. The emptiness beside her in bed seems to expand, becoming a void that nothing can fill. You feel that hollow sensation in your own chest, an ache that makes even breathing feel like an effort. The Queen's mourning transforms her appearance and her reign. Black becomes her only colour, from the heavy bombazine of her dresses to the jet beads of her jewellery. The fabrics rustle as she moves, a constant reminder of her status as widow. You feel the weight of these garments on your own shoulders, how they restrict movement and seem to absorb light and heat. Victoria's days fall into a melancholy pattern. She visits Albert's rooms each morning, running her fingertips over his possessions, the silver-backed brushes still containing a few of his hairs, the pocket watch stopped at the moment of his death, the half-finished book with a marker still holding his place. The rooms are kept exactly as he left them, down to fresh hot water being brought each morning as if he might still need it for his toilette. The scent of his cologne lingers faintly in the air, growing fainter with each passing month, despite the servants' efforts to preserve everything perfectly. I am in a state of chronic sorrow which will last as long as my sad, lonely life shall endure, Victoria writes in her journal. The scratch of her pen against paper is slower now, the letters less evenly formed. Tears sometimes blur the ink, creating watery pools that dry into permanent reminders of her grief. Victoria withdraws from public view almost completely. The burden of appearing in public without Albert beside her seems unbearable. She retreats to her favourite residences, Windsor Castle, Osborne House on the Isle of Wight, and Balmoral in Scotland. Each place holds memories of Albert that are both precious and painful. The sound of his footsteps seems to echo in empty corridors. You imagine you can hear them too, the firm, measured tread now present only in memory. The British public, initially sympathetic to their Queen's sorrow, grows increasingly impatient as months of mourning stretch into years. Newspapers question whether a perpetually absent monarch serves any purpose. Some even call for the abolition of the monarchy, a shocking suggestion in Victorian Britain. The criticism is like a distant storm, rumbling on the horizon of Victoria's consciousness, but unable to penetrate the fog of her grief. Throughout this dark period, Victoria continues to fulfil her constitutional duties. State papers are still reviewed, her distinctive handwriting marking comments in the margins. Ministers are still received, though now they must travel to whichever residence the Queen currently occupies. The business of ruling an empire continues, a steady undercurrent beneath the surface of personal tragedy. In this time of profound loss, an unlikely figure steps forward to help Victoria regain her will to live. John Brown, a Scottish servant from the Balmoral estate. Brown's manner is blunt, his Scottish accent thick and sometimes difficult to understand, but his unwavering loyalty and refusal to treat the Queen with the excessive deference she usually receives provides a strange comfort. He speaks to Victoria as a person, not just a monarch, addressing her as woman in his broad accent. "What would you be wanting today, then?" Brown asks each morning, his voice cutting through the quiet of the Queen's chambers. The rough burr of his accent feels like a warm woolen blanket against the cold precision of court speech. You find yourself leaning closer to catch his words, the unfamiliar cadence drawing you in. Brown encourages Victoria to spend time outdoors, insisting on daily walks regardless of weather. The Highland air is bracing, the scent of pine and heather clearing the head like smelling salts. Rain patters on umbrellas or sunshine warms their faces as they walk the paths around Balmoral. The soft squelch of mud beneath boots, the distant bleating of sheep on the hills, the call of birds overhead, all these sounds gradually begin to penetrate Victoria's cocoon of grief. The relationship between Queen and servant raises eyebrows and prompts gossip. Some cruelly refer to Victoria as Mrs. Brown, implying an improper connection. You feel a flash of indignation on her behalf at these whispers, knowing that Brown's value lies in his forthright manner and steadfast support, not any romantic entanglement. He becomes her shield against a world that expects her to simply move on from losing the centre of her existence. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Victoria begins to emerge from the deepest phase of her mourning. She will wear black for the rest of her life, but the acute pain gradually transforms into a more manageable sorrow. It's like watching a wound heal, still leaving a scar, but no longer raw and bleeding. You feel this in your own body, the way sharp pain can dull to an ache that becomes simply part of who you are. By the late 1860s, Victoria begins to increase her public appearances. She still avoids London as much as possible, but agrees to open Parliament in 1866 and 1867. The weight of the crown on her head feels different now, heavier without Albert to share the burden, yet somehow a reminder of the strength she possesses. The velvet and ermine of her parliamentary robes rustles softly as she walks to the throne, the sound echoing in the hushed chamber. Two men prove instrumental in coaxing Victoria back into public life: her eldest son Bertie, now Prince of Wales, and Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli. Bertie, though often at odds with his mother, takes on more royal duties during her seclusion. His easy charm and sociability make him popular with the public, something Victoria regards with mixed feelings. You sense her conflict, pride in her son mingled with irritation at his very different approach to royal duties. Disraeli, with his novelist's understanding of human nature, approaches Victoria with flattery and genuine interest. "Everyone likes flattery," he once remarked, "and when it comes to royalty, you should lay it on with a trowel." His conversations with the Queen are peppered with compliments delivered in his distinctive voice, low and melodious, with precise enunciation that somehow enhances rather than diminishes his sincerity. The sound of his voice seems to lift Victoria's spirits, the corners of her mouth turning up almost despite herself. Under their combined influence, Victoria gradually resumes her role as the visible symbol of the monarchy. Each public appearance requires enormous effort, like lifting a great weight. You feel the strain in your own muscles, the way your heart might race before facing a crowd. For Victoria, every outing is haunted by Albert's absence. Yet each successful engagement builds her confidence for the next. The year 1876 brings a significant change to Victoria's title. Parliament votes to grant her the additional title of Empress of India, recognising Britain's control over the subcontinent. The new title pleases Victoria greatly. "We are Empress of India," she declares, the plural pronoun a reminder of how she still considers herself joined to Albert, even in death. Victoria develops a fascination with India, though she never visits its shores. The vibrant colours, exotic scents and rich culture of the jewel in Britain's imperial crown captivate her imagination. You picture the contrast between her perpetual black mourning clothes and the brilliant hues of Indian textiles, spices and jewellery that find their way to her residences, islands of colour in her monochrome existence. This interest intensifies in 1887 when Abdul Karim joins her household during her Golden Jubilee celebrations. Initially a waiter, Karim quickly becomes Victoria's munshi, or teacher, instructing her in Urdu and sharing insights about Indian culture. His voice, accented but clear, introduces new sounds and cadences to the palace. The unfamiliar words of Urdu feel round and smooth in your mouth as you imagine Victoria practicing them, her British accent transforming the flowing language into something more clipped and precise. Victoria's relationship with Karim scandalises the royal household even more than her friendship with Brown had done. Racial prejudice runs deep in Victorian society, and the sight of their queen treating an Indian servant as a trusted companion provokes outrage among courtiers. You feel a tightness in your chest at the unfairness of these attitudes, the way fear of difference can manifest as cruelty. But Victoria, now in her 60s and increasingly confident in her own judgment, ignores the disapproval. She values Karim's perspective and enjoys his company. The scent of Indian spices sometimes wafts from her apartments as Karim introduces her to cuisine from his homeland. Cinnamon, cardamom and cloves create an aromatic cloud that seems exotic and mysterious in the traditionally British environment of the palace. Throughout these later years of her reign, Victoria's family continues to expand. Her children marry into royal houses across Europe, earning her the nickname Grandmother of Europe. Her descendants sit on the thrones of Germany, Russia, Spain, Greece, Romania, and Norway. Family gatherings become complex diplomatic affairs, with Victoria firmly at the centre as matriarch. The nurseries at Windsor, Balmoral and Osborne fill with a new generation. Victoria takes more joy in her grandchildren than she sometimes did in her own children. The sound of their laughter echoes through rooms that had been too quiet for too long. The patter of small feet on marble floors, the excited whispers of children trying and failing to be quiet near Grandmama's study, these sounds bring life back to spaces that grief had silenced. Letters flow constantly between Victoria and her scattered family. Her distinctive handwriting fills pages with advice, instructions, and genuine interest in their lives. The scratching of her pen continues late into the night, the soft hiss of gas lamps providing light for her correspondence. You feel the slight ache in your fingers that comes from hours of writing, the satisfaction of maintaining connections across vast distances. Victoria keeps a firm hand on her family, attempting to guide her children and grandchildren, both politically and personally. Not all appreciate her interference. Her eldest daughter Vicky, now Crown Princess of Prussia, often finds herself caught between loyalty to her mother and to her adopted country. Their letters sometimes crackle with tension beneath the affectionate phrases. You sense the strain in your own shoulders as you imagine navigating such difficult waters. The Queen's domestic arrangements settle into comfortable patterns. Her household staff know her preferences exactly, how she likes her tea prepared, strong with a splash of milk, which chair she prefers in each room, the precise temperature she finds comfortable. The soft clink of china, teacups, the gentle crackle of fires kept burning even in mild weather, the rustle of servants moving efficiently through their tasks. These sounds create a soothing backdrop to Victoria's days. In 1887, Britain celebrates Victoria's Golden Jubilee, marking 50 years of her reign. For the first time in decades, she processes through London in an open carriage, visible to the thousands who line the streets. The sound of cheering is overwhelming after so many years of relative quiet. It washes over you like waves, the collective voice of a nation expressing relief and joy at seeing their monarch among them again. Victoria's face, photographed during the Jubilee, shows the hint of a smile, a rare sight since Albert's death. The lines of grief are still visible, but there's a softness around her eyes that suggests healing. The heavy mourning clothes remain, but her posture has straightened, her chin lifted. You feel a similar lightening in your own chest, as if a weight has been partially lifted. 10 years later, the Diamond Jubilee of 1897 marks 60 years on the throne. Victoria is now 78, her small frame grown more rounded with age and a lifetime of rich royal meals. Movement has become more difficult. She often uses a cane or wheelchair. You feel the stiffness in your own joints, the way each step requires more thought, more effort than it once did. Despite these physical challenges, Victoria's mind remains sharp, her interest in state affairs undiminished. The Diamond Jubilee celebrations are even grander than those of the Golden Jubilee. Britain is at the height of its imperial power, ruling nearly a quarter of the world's land and population. Victoria's procession through London symbolises this might. Representatives from across the empire join in, creating a spectacle of unprecedented diversity and colour. "From my heart I thank my beloved people," Victoria telegraphs afterward. "May God bless them." The words travel along cables stretching across continents and under oceans, a physical manifestation of how the world has shrunk during her long reign. The clicking of telegraph keys creates a new language of dots and dashes, connecting distant parts of the empire in ways unimaginable when Victoria first took the throne. As the 19th century draws to a close, Victoria increasingly becomes a symbol of the era that bears her name. Her conservative moral values, emphasis on family, and sense of duty come to define Victorian for generations to come. Yet the woman behind the symbol remains more complex than this simplified image suggests. You sense the layers of her personality, the passionate young queen, the devoted wife, the grieving widow, the formidable matriarch, all coexisting within the small figure in perpetual black. The new century arrives, 1900, a number that seems significant, a turning point. Victoria, now in her 81st year, feels the weight of time. Her handwriting grows shakier, her daily walks shorter. The world around her continues to change at an ever-accelerating pace. Automobiles occasionally replace horse-drawn carriages, making a different sound as they approach, a mechanical purr rather than the familiar clip-clop of hooves. Electric lights begin to replace gas in some rooms of the palace, their steady glow lacking the gentle movement of flame. Loss continues to mark Victoria's life. Her second son, Alfred, dies in July 1900. Her grandson, Christian Victor, succumbs to typhoid fever while serving in the Boer War in October of the same year. Each death reopens the wound of Albert's loss, though time has taught her to bear grief with greater resilience. You feel this in your own heart, how sorrow can wash over you without completely submerging you, how you can continue breathing even when it hurts. By January 1901, Victoria's health begins to fail noticeably. She moves to Osborne House on the Isle of Wight, seeking peace and sea air. The sound of waves breaking on the shore drifts through partially opened windows, a rhythmic shushing that seems to encourage rest. Gulls cry overhead, their voices carrying on the wind. You feel the slight salt spray in the air, taste it on your lips. Victoria's family gathers as her condition worsens. Her son and heir, Bertie, sits by her bedside, his hand occasionally patting hers with awkward affection. Their relationship has been complicated, but blood and duty bind them nonetheless. Grandchildren move quietly through the house, their voices hushed, footsteps muffled by carpets. The atmosphere is one of waiting, of breath held collectively. On January 22, 1901, Queen Victoria dies at Osborne House, ending the longest reign in British history up to that time. She passes away in the arms of her grandson, Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany, with her son Bertie, soon to be King Edward VII, at her side. The moment is peaceful, a soft exhalation, then stillness. You feel your own breathing slow in sympathy, matching the gradual quieting in the room. According to Victoria's instructions, she is dressed in her wedding veil, and various mementos of Albert are placed in her coffin, including a plaster cast of his hand and one of his dressing gowns. Most secretly, her doctor places a photograph of John Brown in her hand, along with a lock of his hair. These items are hidden from view by carefully arranged flowers. The scent of lilies fills the room, their sweet heaviness mingling with the sharper smell of pine from the coffin wood. Victoria's funeral procession moves through streets lined with mourners. The rhythmic step of the military escort creates a solemn cadence. Flags fly at half-mast, their fabrics snapping softly in the winter breeze. Church bells toll across the nation, their deep resonance felt as much as heard. You sense the vibration in your chest, a physical manifestation of collective grief. The Queen who shaped an era is laid to rest beside her beloved Albert in the royal mausoleum at Frogmore. Above the entrance are inscribed her own words: "Farewell, best beloved, here at last I shall rest with thee in Christ I shall rise again." The stone is cool and permanent, the letters carved deep enough to withstand weather and time. You trace them in your mind, feeling the curves and lines of each word. Victoria's death marks the end of an era that bore her name. The Victorian Age, with its rapid industrialization, imperial expansion, social reforms, and distinctive moral code, passes into history with its namesake. Her son, Edward VII, ushers in the Edwardian era, a brief but significant shift in tone and attitude before the cataclysm of World War I. Yet Victoria's legacy continues. Her descendants still occupy thrones across Europe. The institutions she supported, the traditions she established, the moral values she championed, all continue to influence British society long after her death. Even today, over a century later, to call something Victorian immediately evokes a specific time, place, and set of values. As night falls over Frogmore, stars appear in the clear January sky. The Royal Mausoleum stands silhouetted against the darkness, its dome a perfect curve against the scattered points of light. Inside, Victoria and Albert rest side by side, reunited at last after nearly 40 years of separation. The grounds are quiet now, visited only by the occasional deer stepping softly across the grass or an owl swooping silently between trees. Your own eyelids grow heavy as you imagine this peaceful scene, the story of Victoria, the girl who wasn't meant to be queen, the young woman who embraced her destiny, the wife whose love transcended death, the monarch who defined an age, settles in your mind like a cherished book being gently closed after the final page. The rhythm of your breathing slows, matching the steady cadence of time itself. Your limbs feel pleasantly heavy, sinking deeper into comfort with each exhale. The tensions of the day release gradually, muscles relaxing one by one from your toes upward. Sleep approaches like a gentle tide, ready to carry you into dreams perhaps filled with royal processions, highland landscapes, or the soft glow of gas lamps in palace corridors. Tomorrow we'll explore more of Victoria's world, the empire she ruled, the people she influenced, the changes she witnessed over her remarkable 63-year reign. But for now, rest comes easily, deeply, completely. The dawn breaks over London, revealing a city transformed during Victoria's long reign. This is no longer the relatively small capital of her childhood, but a sprawling metropolis of nearly 5 million souls. The morning light catches on factory chimneys, their silhouettes standing like sentinels against the pale sky. Thin streams of smoke already begin to rise, creating a gauzy veil that will thicken as the day progresses. The air carries the complex scent of the Thames, muddy, slightly salty, with undercurrents of industrial waste and the everyday life of a great city. To understand Queen Victoria's world fully, we must step back from the palaces and royal residences and walk the streets of the nation she ruled for 63 years. The Britain of Victoria's reign was a place of dramatic contrasts, of unprecedented wealth and grinding poverty, of technological marvels and ancient traditions, of moral strictness and hidden vices. You feel these contradictions as a curious tension in your body, a pulling in different directions that somehow maintains a precarious balance. The Industrial Revolution, already underway when Victoria came to the throne in 1837, accelerates throughout her reign. Steam power transforms every aspect of life. The rhythmic chug-chug-chug of engines becomes the heartbeat of the nation, in factories, on railways, aboard steamships. The sound is both exciting and relentless, a constant reminder of progress that never pauses for rest. You feel it as a vibration through the soles of your feet when you stand near machinery, a physical sensation that connects you to this new mechanical age. Railways spread across Britain like iron veins, connecting cities and towns in a network that shrinks distances dramatically. A journey from London to Edinburgh that once took days by stagecoach now requires only hours by train. The railway stations become cathedrals of the modern age, vast structures of iron and glass like London's King's Cross or Paddington. Inside, the air is a mixture of coal smoke, steam, and the peculiar metallic scent of hot iron. The sound is a symphony of hissing steam, clanking couplings, conductors' whistles, and the murmur of hundreds of conversations echoing under high glass roofs. You feel the nervous excitement of travellers, the anticipation of movement, the slight disorientation of being in these liminal spaces between departure and arrival. In industrial cities like Manchester, Birmingham and Glasgow, factories dominate both the landscape and daily life. The cotton mills of Lancashire are particularly imposing, massive brick buildings with tall windows designed to provide light for workers before electric illumination becomes common. Inside, the noise is overwhelming. Hundreds of power looms create a deafening clatter that makes normal conversation impossible. Workers communicate through gestures or by mouthing words exaggeratedly. After a day in such conditions, the sudden quiet of stepping outside creates an almost physical sensation of relief, though the ringing in ears continues for hours. The air in these industrial towns hangs heavy with coal smoke and factory emissions. It leaves a gritty taste on the tongue and a fine layer of soot on skin and clothing. Handkerchiefs used to wipe faces come away smudged with black. Laundry hung out to dry acquires a grey tinge no amount of soap can fully remove. The constant presence of this pollution creates a slight but persistent tightness in the chest, a subtle reminder of the cost of progress. Workers rise before dawn, their day beginning with the factory whistle that pierces the early morning darkness. The sound cuts through dreams, demanding immediate wakefulness. Feet hit cold floorboards, bodies aching from yesterday's labour even before today's begins. A hasty breakfast of bread and tea provides little sustenance but offers at least the comfort of warmth in the belly before venturing into often frigid morning air. You feel the hollow emptiness that comes from insufficient rest and nutrition, the way it makes limbs heavier and thoughts slower. For many workers, home is a terraced house in the shadow of the factory where they labour. These houses are built quickly and cheaply to accommodate the swelling urban population. They stand in long, identical rows, often back to back with another row, meaning no windows or ventilation at the rear. Inside, space is limited, perhaps 2 rooms downstairs and 2 upstairs for a family that might number 6, 8 or more. The walls are thin enough to hear neighbours' conversations or arguments. The smell of cooking, washing and human bodies mingles in these close quarters, creating a distinctive domestic aroma that is neither pleasant nor unpleasant, simply familiar. Sanitation in these industrial towns is often primitive or non-existent during the early Victorian period. Open sewers run along streets, their contents eventually finding their way to local rivers. The stench on hot summer days becomes nearly unbearable, a miasma that seems to cling to clothing and hair. Diseases spread rapidly in these conditions: cholera, typhoid, smallpox. You feel a shiver of fear at the thought of these invisible killers, the way they can transform a healthy person into a corpse within days or even hours. The wealthy, meanwhile, live in a different world entirely. Their homes in fashionable London neighbourhoods or country estates exist in stark contrast to workers' housing. High ceilings, large windows, spacious rooms and gardens provide light, air and separation from neighbours. The scent of beeswax, polish, fresh flowers and quality food creates an atmosphere of comfort and privilege. Servants maintain these spaces in immaculate condition, the gentle swish of their dusters and brooms a barely noticeable background to daily life. You feel the expansiveness of these spaces, how they allow bodies and minds to stretch out without constraint. Victoria herself remains somewhat insulated from the harsh realities of industrial Britain, though reports reach her through government ministers and official visits. The monarchy's role is changing during her reign, becoming less politically powerful but more symbolically important. Victoria and Albert consciously craft an image of royal respectability and family values that resonates with the growing middle class. Their domestic harmony, displayed in carefully staged photographs and official portraits, becomes a model to which ordinary families aspire. You sense the deliberate nature of this image-making, the way it creates both connection and distance between monarch and subjects. The middle class expands dramatically during the Victorian era. These are the managers, professionals, merchants and skilled tradespeople who benefit from industrial growth without experiencing the worst hardships of factory labour. Their homes are comfortable, if not luxurious. The parlour becomes the centre of middle-class domestic life, a room kept for receiving visitors and family gatherings, often containing the household's most prized possessions. The upright piano against one wall, the aspidistra plant in the window, the framed family photographs on side tables, all these become iconic elements of middle-class Victorian homes. The ticking of the mantel clock measures out time in these orderly households. Its steady rhythm, a reassurance that all is proceeding as it should. You feel the security of this regulated existence, the comfort of knowing what comes next. Education expands throughout Victoria's reign. The Education Act of 1870 establishes board schools to provide elementary education for all children. The scratching of pencils on slates creates a distinctive sound in classrooms across Britain, accompanied by the sing-song recitation of multiplication tables or spelling words. The smell of chalk dust, ink, and polished wooden desks becomes associated with learning for generations. You recall this scent from your own school days, how it can instantly transport you back to childhood. Religion remains central to Victorian life, though church attendance begins to decline among urban working classes as the century progresses. Sunday observance is strict in respectable households, shops closed, amusements forbidden, church attendance expected. The solemn tones of church bells call worshippers to service, their deep resonance seeming to vibrate through the very streets. Inside churches, the rustle of Sunday best clothing, the soft thud of prayer books being opened and closed, the collective murmur of responses creates a familiar auditory landscape. You feel your posture automatically improving, back straightening as if sitting in a hard wooden pew. Morality and propriety govern social interactions, at least publicly. The Victorian label later becomes associated with prudishness and repression, though the reality is more complex. Strict codes of behaviour coexist with widespread prostitution, pornography, and other vices carefully hidden from public view. For respectable women, particularly of the middle and upper classes, life is highly constrained. Corsets physically restrict movement, creating the fashionable wasp waist at the cost of compressed internal organs and restricted breathing. You feel the pressure around your ribs, the way each breath can only be shallow, the slight lightheadedness that comes from perpetual oxygen deprivation. Throughout Victoria's reign, movements for social reform gain momentum. Campaigners like Lord Shaftesbury work to improve conditions for child labourers and factory workers. Florence Nightingale transforms nursing during the Crimean War, establishing it as a respectable profession for women. The suffragist movement begins advocating for women's right to vote, though Victoria herself disapproves, calling it a mad, wicked folly. You feel the tension between progress and tradition, the way change both excites and frightens, promising improvement while threatening comfortable certainties. As the sun rises higher, we turn our gaze beyond Britain's shores to the vast empire over which Victoria presides. At its height, the British Empire covers approximately 1/4 of the Earth's land surface and rules over 1/4 of the world's population. The phrase "the empire on which the sun never sets" becomes literally true. At any given moment, some part of Britain's global dominion is in daylight. The weight of this responsibility is enormous, though Victoria herself never travels beyond Europe. You feel the curious mixture of pride and burden that imperial power brings, the way it stretches Britain's sense of self across oceans and continents. India becomes the jewel in the crown of the British Empire. After the Indian Rebellion of 1857, or the First War of Independence as it's known in India, the British government officially takes control from the East India Company. In 1876, Victoria becomes Empress of India, a title she particularly values. The subcontinent's rich culture, ancient traditions, and striking diversity fascinate the Queen, particularly in her later years when Abdul Karim becomes her munshi, or teacher. Through him she learns some Urdu and develops an appreciation for Indian cuisine. The spices, cardamom, cinnamon, turmeric, create aromas entirely different from traditional British cooking, exotic and enticing. You imagine the surprise of palace servants at these new scents wafting from the royal apartments, their unfamiliarity both intriguing and slightly alarming. Across Africa, British territorial claims expand throughout Victoria's reign. Kenya, Uganda, Nigeria, Ghana, Zimbabwe, then Rhodesia, South Africa, all become part of the empire through a combination of exploration, commercial enterprise, missionary activity, and military conquest. The motivations for imperial expansion are complex: economic opportunity, strategic advantage, the genuine if patronizing belief in bringing civilization to supposedly primitive peoples. You feel the contradiction between the idealistic justifications and the often brutal realities of imperial rule, the way good intentions can pave roads to places far from paradise. In Australia and New Zealand, British colonies established before Victoria's reign grow and develop their own distinct identities while maintaining strong ties to the mother country. Transportation of convicts to Australia continues until 1868, creating societies built partially on the labour of those Britain rejected. Gold rushes in the 1850s transform the Australian colonies, bringing waves of immigrants and sudden wealth. The vast open spaces of these southern lands contrast sharply with crowded Britain, the abundant sunshine a dramatic change from London's frequent fog and drizzle. You sense how the physical environment shapes developing national characters, more relaxed, less formal, adapted to heat and distance in ways that surprise visitors from the homeland. Canada achieves confederation in 1867, uniting formerly separate British colonies into a dominion within the empire. The relationship between Britain and these settler colonies becomes increasingly complex during Victoria's reign, still bound by loyalty to the crown, but increasingly self-governing and distinctive. The Queen takes genuine interest in these distant subjects, though she never visits them. Letters and reports bring news from across the globe to her desk, alongside samples of local products and occasionally even wildlife. You picture the curiosity with which these exotic items are examined in palace rooms so far removed from their origins. Trade binds the empire together and fuels Britain's prosperity. Ships carry raw materials from colonies to British ports: cotton from India, wool from Australia, timber from Canada, gold from South Africa. These same ships return laden with manufactured goods, textiles, machinery, pottery, and countless other products of British industry. The rhythm of loading and unloading creates constant activity at docks in London, Liverpool, Glasgow, and other port cities. The creaking of ropes, shouted instructions, clanking of chains, and general hubbub of maritime commerce forms a distinctive soundscape. The air carries the scent of tar, salt water,